Well, here we are. It is now December 13th. It is Friday the 13th, and I don't have a Friday the 13th jersey to wear. I have one that's on its way, but it's not going to be here today, so I can't do anything fun Friday the 13th related for this one. But that day's coming because I do have a Friday the 13th jersey on the way. I do have the pen, of course, the Jason Voorhees pen, which is around here somewhere. All right, so into the news of the day. And I'm wearing Kings just because I wanted to wear this jersey, not because there's any King news to report on. Zach Bogosian's requested a trade. I could imagine this coming into management, them going, we're trying. The reason I say that is because of their defenseman, Bogosian's the one that's most likely to be already on the trade block. Remember, they've been rumored to be looking for forward depth in Buffalo for a while. So I would think Zach Bogosian's name's been out there. But due to a combination of contract and his injury history, it may be hard to find a taker for him. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. Now that this has come out publicly and he has requested a trade, it's a little bit odd. But we'll see if there's any takers. Again, you've got to think of his injury history. He's going to miss games and his contract as well. So we'll see where he ends up. Good news for Sens fans. Sabourin's wearing a contact jersey. He has shed the non-contact jersey, so he is closer to a return. The bad news, the bad part of this is DeMello broke his finger against Montreal. He's out 3 to 4 weeks. So Dylan DeMello will be out of the lineup. Sabourin should be back relatively soon. When they start wearing a contact jersey, you got to think it's probably about a week out, maybe not even. So, yeah, but for Ottawa, again, it's not playoffs this year anyway, so it's all fine. Tim Thomas, who hasn't been seen a lot, he's inducted into the U.S. Hall of Fame, or U.S. Hockey Hall of Fame, I should say, and he opened up about dealing with concussions after retirement. He's been a polarizing figure in hockey for the last, I'll say, over half a decade. And it is interesting to hear him talk about dealing with concussions. We need more players to come out and talk about dealing with living with brain injury, because it's important that we talk about how their life goes when they're not in the National Hockey League anymore. Because Dan Carcella will tell you it's not necessarily all fun and games, and that the money you make playing hockey, depending on where you're living and how things work, if you don't have insurance, or if you can't get insurance for some of your injuries, and if the NHL goes, it's not hockey related, you can be in some trouble financially. That money disappears quickly. So it's good to hear Thomas opening up and talking about some of the things that have occurred in his life since hockey was over. He had an amazing run to become an NHL goaltender. It's a strange career for him. And I've done a career video on Tim Thomas previously. And it is fascinating because he didn't really hit it as an NHL goaltender until he was in his 30s. So by the time he became a big-name goaltender, he was already considered to be past his prime. Most players in their mid-30s are past their prime, but Thomas was fantastic, and he did get that cup ring in 2011. Now, I don't think we ever see him in the National Hockey League Hall of Fame unless we come up with a different wing. I've talked about this before, and I think Paul Henderson's a good example of this as well. Paul Henderson didn't have a career as a National Hockey League player that would warrant putting him in the Hall of Fame, but he scored the most famous goal in international hockey history. So there should be a wing of the Hall of Fame where you recognize those achievements. So for Tim Thomas, it could be that 2011 run to the Stanley Cup that he gets put into the Hall of Fame and gets something for. Anyways, so good to see Tim Thomas back in the public eye, and hopefully he will open up more because it makes it easier for other players to talk about when they're going through it as well. Lucas Radil is on waivers for the San Jose Sharks. Kind of surprised by this, and yet not, in that he hasn't been in the lineup for a while. He hasn't got any points in 14 games. I'm just surprised that he hasn't had a good season and that San Jose signed any takers. I would not be surprised to see Radil get picked up by a team like, say, Detroit or Ottawa. He's young enough. He can still realize his potential. He can still fit in. And who knows, maybe moving on from San Jose would kickstart him back into the level that he was supposed to be at originally. when he was brought in by the San Jose Sharks. So I feel bad for the kid, I do. Last night's game between Carolina and Vancouver, everybody's talking about the Sebastian Aho goal, which wasn't a goal because the whistle went, and that it shouldn't have gone because it was a delayed penalty, and it wasn't actually a change it was just a deflection. It wasn't a change of possession. Once the referee blows the whistle, play's dead. So the referee went over and apologized to the Carolina Hurricanes after, sorry. Went over to Jordan Stahl, yeah, that should have been a goal. There isn't anything in the NHL to allow that to change. And honestly, we would be opening Pandora's box if, the referee blew the whistle, but he shouldn't have. Almost every game you will see a puck that's actually loose, and the referee blows the whistle because he lost sight of it. So if we start making changes that's an example of that doesn't matter, then we start opening Pandora's box, because there have been times where referee blows the whistle on a puck that's not covered, and the team that had the puck could very well have scored on that play. So do you award, and that's the thing, and I understand Carolina fans being upset. What bothers me is that it detracts from what Markstrom did last night, but we'll come back to Markstrom. It's a referee's mistake. These things happen regularly. I try to keep them out of the reviews as much as I can. I will just say nope, that doesn't count, or yeah, that counts, and I stay out of an opinion on it because it's just not worth the hassle. And should that have counted? Yeah. And did it? No. And the other thing that I'll say on that too is that early in the season there was a game between Boston and Colorado. There were 2 goals disallowed against Boston, which Boston fans did not like. And I still said, you know what? Boston lost the game. I don't care if people agreed with those goals or not. If you don't like goals that don't count, then by all means go out and score another one. And that's been my opinion for years, and it doesn't matter whether it's a team that I cheer for that happens to. Go out and score another one then. That should have counted. Get angry, have it light a fire under you, and go out and score another one. Drew Doughty says we need fighting, and this is a top article on Sportsnet. I'm not sure why we're having this discussion right now. The NHL has fighting down. Fighting has been up somewhat lately as some games get kind of hotly contested. But honestly, fighting is nowhere near what it was in the 80s or 90s, and it's never going to leave the game. The NHL will never take fighting out of the game. I'm pretty sure Gary Bettman himself has come forward and said, we're never taking fighting out of the game. So I'm not sure why Doughty's saying we need fighting is an article, and why we need to talk about, they haven't done a whole lot to curb fighting. The thing is, there aren't enforcers in the game like there used to be, so there's less fighting. But I don't see the NHL ever completely taking fighting out of the game. I just don't see that ever being possible, because they know, let's be honest, they know it generates revenue. They know it generates interest. The only thing that could make the NHL actually say, all right, we've got to do something about fighting, would be if something occurred that proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that CTE, brain injuries, are directly linked to fighting in the game. And I don't think that direct proof would necessarily change anything either. I don't think the NHL will ever change it. I'm not anti-fighting. I think it's fine in some instances. I do wince sometimes at some of the hits that get thrown, some of the punches that get thrown. There are times where a guy will really clip somebody and you go, oh, that's a concussion, or that could cause a major injury. But that's been in fighting as long as there's been fighting. And players are much bigger now than they used to be. I'm pretty sure they're much stronger than they used to be. So while we can look back on the 70s and 80s and say, well, players aren't as tough as they used to be, they're also a lot bigger and a lot stronger. So they punch a lot harder. It's not just the shots that are faster. All right, on a scary note, last night there was an OHL game that was canceled. Niagara Ice Dogs goaltender had his leg cut by a skate blade. And from the sounds of it, I have not watched the footage. I'm not watching the footage. It's not going to happen. It sounds like it was the femoral artery. Now, having done level 2 first aid, you have to know how to cut off the circulation, cut off the blood to the leg. And it is terrifying. And basically, it's along the lines of, and the way it was described to us in training was that you get your fingers in there, you just roll the muscle, So you basically roll it so that you are actually holding the artery so blood can't get through. And they got to tie it off. You got to use like a tourniquet and tie it off. And then you got to kind of release the pressure a little bit and see if it starts bleeding again. But if you can't stop the bleeding, you've got to hold it. Potentially, a person could have to hold somebody's leg in that position until they're in the hospital and the doctor takes over. That is something that potentially can happen. So it's a scary thing. So for medics that were on the scene and immediately sprung into action, that is one of the scariest things you can deal with, because a guy can bleed out right in front of you. I know it's minutes. It's been a while since I took my training. I know it's minutes. I know you've got a couple of minutes, and if you don't get that blood to stop, you are not dealing with somebody who's going to pull through. So it's a scary thing, and it was bad enough that they went, all right, we're going to just cancel the game. I'm imagining rescheduled for later, but here's hoping that Tucker Tynan's okay. From what I understand, they updated that he was in the hospital and he was in stable condition. He's going to recover. Everything's going to be okay. But something like this, it kind of reminds me of Clint Malarchuk when he got his throat cut by a skate blade. That's something that's going to stick with this kid potentially, and hopefully he's okay, because I know for Malarchuk that really changed things for him. Like, that was really scary, and it's the reason why when goalies don't wear throat guards these days, I think they're nuts. I think they're crazy. I do, with the way the guys crash the net. I think just having a throat guard, gotta have that, and I think they're crazy when they don't wear one. But anyways, that's one of those scary incidents that happens in hockey, and I try not to, because that's the kind of thing that'll get in my head and it'll bug me. So all right, I misspoke last night with Jacob Markstrom. I'm going to come back on this. He had 2 shutouts in 2016, 2017. The reason that it sticks with me that Markstrom wasn't a guy who got shutouts is because he's deserved shutouts for years. And it was over 200 games before he got his first shutout. I'm pretty sure it was over 200 games. He had 1 last year, and he has 1 so far this year. So odds are he probably doesn't get another one. Vancouver's defense has never really been one that's conducive to getting goaltenders shutouts, at least over the last few years. And it does stick with me a bit, because Markstrom plays really well. Now, people could say, well, you have to put an asterisk next to last night's because, of the goal that didn't count for Carolina. And I would counter with, no, not really. And again, there are disputed goals, there are disputed non-goals. It's just part of hockey, and he saved 43 shots. So I think he deserves credit for that. And I thought that the players, the Carolina Hurricane players, really handled it well. And they had their power play opportunities. The Canucks killed very well. The Canucks had their power play opportunities. The Canes killed very well. And it was and again, when I talk about it being a slow game, and I know there are a lot of people who think it's really exciting. This is something I was talking to my wife about last night, where I am flipping back and forth between 6 or 7 different games, and I get a feeling for each game, and I try my best to understand the feeling and the mood of each game. And that Vancouver-Carolina game to me felt more like a chess match. So when I'm flipping around between games that are really exciting back and forth action, and there's a shot here and a goal there, and then there's a fight over here, and then I go back to the Carolina-Vancouver game, which still feels like a chess match. It's just that's why, when I'm talking about the Carolina-Vancouver game, I'm sort of like, because while it's the Canucks, and again, if I watch all 60-plus minutes of that game, odds are there's more of an emotional attachment to it. The way that things work with this channel, I don't really get that emotionally involved in games. Even last night, for instance, when Boston lost to Tampa, there was a game, the game between Boston and Washington. I was actually hoping Boston wouldn't tie it the other night and force overtime, because it was taking away from the game that was going to follow that was on the same channel, and I'd already missed the start of that game. So I'm kind of like, no, let's get this done. Washington's got to win this in regulation so I can catch what's going on in the next game. Never would have thought that before I had the channel, so it does change things. But for Markstrom, I'm sorry that I said his second shutout when it was his fourth. It's just I'm not used to seeing him get shutouts at all, so it's always nice when you see one in his favor. All right, there you go. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, as always. And worthy of note, keep in mind, Detroit won last night, so coaches are no longer getting fired. That's it. They've missed their window. But Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. As always, don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. And I did do the video recently, the unboxing with bench clears. They have provided for my subscribers the 10% discount. If you are interested at all in getting a tank through them at a 10% discount, the link is in the description below my videos at this stage. And we'll see how that goes. If it performs well, odds are that link may stay active for good. If it doesn't, that's okay too. Hey, thank you guys so much for all your support, and I will talk to you again soon.